What's up, everybody? Celtic Scarecrow here, back with our video. Get those 10s and 20 views. Well, my last couple videos haven't really hit like the numbers I was hoping for. 10. Hence the joke, the 10s and 20 views. So what do you do when your videos are in a slight slump and you're getting ready for the football season, which you're planning on streaming as many games as physically plausible without having to pay for anyone? You go back to the things that actually didn't work. So today I will be reacting to the Fat Electrician, his hour and 18-minute, pretty much 19-minute video about American legendary Marine sniper Carl Whitefeather Hathcock. I'm going to try to limit my interjections to the ad breaks, if plausible. Unless there's something like extremely crazy that I just want to say right away. So I need my. It helps if I have my headphones. I'm on headphones. And click. There we go. Headphones in. Desktop audio unmuted, because that would suck to go through this whole video and realize it wasn't on there. Link to the original description, so you want to watch it without me in there. And I think I also have a link to his shop in the description. Let's get to it.
This is my 5th attempt at making this video in the past 2 years. Portions of this story have been told and retold across books, newspaper articles, and the internet for decades. And with every retelling, more and more doubt gets cast upon this story's validity because the events seem that unbelievable. And because of that, I felt that it was very important to not only be able to tell this story in its entirety, but to be able to prove that it was not only plausible, but probable along the way. That being said, I've been waiting 2 years to say this next part. Today we're talking about the greatest sniper of all time, ladies and gentlemen, Carlos Norman Hathcock II, or as the North Vietnamese Army and the Viet Cong came to call him, Long Tang, aka Whitefeather. Wait, we gotta get the sponsorship in, then we can have the rest of the story uninterrupted. This video is brought to you by Ridge Wallet. Okay, look, here's the deal. They've sponsored the channel before. You guys already know it's a minimalist wallet that you can stick in your front pocket. That way you're not having this gigantic Gutenberg Bible-sized dad wallet sitting in your back pocket. So why am I bringing this up again? Well,
or if you don't choose to grow up a Deadpool wallet.
Because one, they're paying me. I'm just going to be honest with you. And two, there's never been a better time to upgrade your wallet because right now through September 13th, they're having their summer sweepstakes where they're going to be giving away a grand prize of the winner's choice of either a gold-plated Cybertruck, $100,000 in cash, or a $140,000 Hennessy Velociraptor. Now, I'm not allowed to tell you which one I would pick, but I can tell you I'm not taking the cash, and I definitely am not going with the one that reminds me of Lara Croft's personality.
Don't you think you've seen enough?
For every dollar you spend over at Ridge, you're going to get one entry regardless of the product, but some products are even worth more than that because if you buy the Cyber or the Hennessy model stuff, those are worth 4 times as many entries. And best of all, there's even a way to get entered for free, so go check that out. I'm going to have a link in the description.
Oh, I'm going to go check that out.
And the pinned comment down below. Let's get back to the video.
Okay, here we go. Chapter 1.
January 20th, 1942, Carlos Hathcock Jr. is born in Little Rock, Arkansas. Fast forward to early 1946, Carlos is approximately 3 years old, and his father has just returned home from fighting in World War II.
You might have known my grandmother. She's from, great-grandmother was from Little Rock.
And with him, Carlos Hathcock Sr. brought home a gift for his adorable baby boy, a German Mauser, which, if you don't know, is the primary infantry weapon of the Nazis in World War II. Apparently, he had tactically acquired it after its previous owner had died suddenly.
Yep, that's exactly what happened.
Oh, that's a callback to the oldest American gangster. That's what he always said. The previous owner died.
So, presumably, after rolling up and just seeing the rifle laying on the ground, he did what any American would do. He picked it up, he kind of admired it, and was like, huh, this would make a great gift for my toddler. So he plugged the barrel, he made it inoperable, at least, and then brought it back home and gave it to his kid. So now Dad's home, and we've got young 3-year-old Carlos Hathcock running around in the woods outside of Little Rock, Arkansas with a de-weaponized German Mauser, pretending that he's fighting Nazis and the Imperial Japanese, just like Dad. Fast forward again to when Carlos is 7 years old and he sees his first John Wayne movie where John Wayne is portraying a United States Marine. At this moment, Carlos Hathcock decides that he's going to be a Marine too. Everything else in life, school, chores, all of it is just biding time until he turns 17 years old. He can get his parents' permission to go and join the Marine Corps. 1 year after that, Carlos's father re-enters the military to go fight in the Korean War, and the family is moved to Missouri. Then they're moved to Tennessee. The father goes off, he fights, he comes back home, but when he comes back home, both of his parents they've always kind of had a drinking problem, but their drinking gets significantly worse, and so does their relationship. The next major formative event in Carlos's life is at his 10th birthday, when he is given his very first real gun, a J.C. Higgins bolt-action .22 caliber rifle. From that point on, Carlos basically
Figured it'd be a BB gun or something.
lives out in the woods, shooting cans, squirrels, birds, anything he can. And while Carlos is out in the woods, his parents' relationship continues to deteriorate. And by the time that he is 12, his parents have gotten a divorce, and Carlos is sent back to Arkansas to live with his grandmother in an unincorporated village known as Geyer. Unincorporated village basically just means that they're living out in the middle of bumfuck nowhere. Carlos's next oldest sibling is 10 years younger than him. There's no neighbor kids anywhere near his age for a 20-mile radius, and Grandma and Grandpa are busy doing Grandma and Grandpa stuff. So Carlos spends the majority of his teenage years basically living out in the woods with his dog and his .22 caliber rifle, helping to put food on the family table because Grandma and Grandpa are struggling financially.
God, like similar times, it's just like, hey, I'm gonna go out with my dog, just go hunting because America.
So they are eating
Granted, it sucked as like he had to help provide food at that age, but still.
squirrels, birds, and rabbits, whatever Carlos is able to shoot. During this time, Carlos becomes an exceptional outdoorsman. His .22 caliber rifle does not have a very huge range, and if he wants to be able to kill something efficiently, he needs to be able to get as close as possible. He learns how to move through the woods quietly, sneaking up on highly alert prey. And he becomes such an exceptional marksman that he's able to shoot birds out of the air while they are flying with his .22 caliber rifle, which is impressive. And this goes on for years, and then at the age of 15, Carlos drops out of school and goes to work full-time doing concrete. He does that for 2 more years till he finally hits the age of 17. He then gets consent from his guardian to go and join the Marine Corps. So in 1959, at the age of 17, Carlos Hathcock goes off to training to become a Marine, and he
Oh, that is the era of like jocks, greasers, and jocks.
absolutely crushes it. I mean, how could he not? He's been doing full-time manual labor for a couple of years, and the 10 years prior to that, he's basically been living in the woods by himself, learning how to become an expert marksman. Despite being the best shot out of any new recruit available, he continues to hone this skill. They have a mandatory amount of time and qualifications they have to meet in marksmanship. However, Carlos Hathcock also spends all of his free time out at the range, continuing to work on this skill when nobody else does. He doesn't just want to be a good shot, he wants to be the best shot, and he wants to be able to do it from every single position the Marine Corps utilizes at the time. They do standing, prone, sitting, kneeling, and they have the infamous squat position at this point in time, also commonly referred to as the rice paddy prone, and Carlos practices all of them and masters all of them. It is at this point that Hathcock begins to develop what he calls his bubble, which is essentially his aura of concentration around taking a shot, where nothing in the world gets any attention other than his target and his crosshairs. One of his instructors once said, and I quote, "An elephant could crap on Hathcock's head, and unless the load blocked the sights, Carlos would never even notice." So Carlos is already just naturally immensely talented at marksmanship, but he's also completely obsessed with getting better. That's all this guy cares about. And it just reminds me of something one of my coaches used to say: hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And I probably heard this coach say that 50 times over the course of a couple of years. And then finally we had this new guy that raised his hand and said, "But coach, what if talent does work hard?" To which my coach replied, "You should probably stay out of that motherfucker's way." And in the case of Carlos Hathcock, that would prove to be correct.
LeBron James, Sidney Crosby, Wayne Gretzky, Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, George St. Pierre, if you're on MMA. Like, yeah, look at all these extremely talented people who just dominated their field of sports. And it's just like Patrick Mahomes, I think I might have said him, but you look at all the top-rated athletes that just were like, yeah, I'm going to outwork you, despite being the best.
Carlos finishes training, gets MOS qualified as an 0331, a machine gunner, and then immediately gets sent over to Hawaii and stationed there because that's where the Marine Corps rifle team is. So Carlos goes over to Hawaii, reports for his new duty station, gets settled, gets signed up for every marksmanship competition they have scheduled, shows up to the very first one. It's a 600-yard event. Now, Carlos is here because he's a great shot, but he's also the new guy. He just got out of training. All the big dogs are here. This is where the Marine Corps rifle team is at. Like, he's not expected to do well in these competitions at all. He is the newbie that they need to take under their wing and train, and he's the next generation of shooter, and this is going to be his first competition just to get his feet wet, is what everybody thinks is going to happen, and then Carlos wins the entire fucking thing. Pretty much immediately after winning this competition, he is given an official spot on the Marine Corps rifle team, meaning that this is more or less his full-time job now. Like, yes, he's a machine gunner, but his day-to-day job is going to be going and improving his marksmanship to be able to show off how great the marksmanship in the Marine Corps is, which is great for Carlos. It's basically...
I might have forgot to mute the TV. That would really suck at the TV in the background. Which I could also... Where the hell is my TV remote?
A few moments later.
Back. Found it. I just heard this buzzing sound. I was like, what the hell's that noise? And I was like, oh, I might have forgot to mute the TV in the background, so that could have been what it was. So, that has to be fun with editing later.
His dream job, and on top of that, it's 1960, it's a time of peace, there's no prospects for war on the horizon, and there's really nothing else for a machine gunner to be doing, so the rifle team is a great spot for him. Carlos spends the next 2 years there, continuing to hone his skills, winning all kinds of competitions, and one of the people that he meets there that's also on the rifle team is a lieutenant by the name of Jim Land. And Jim Land has this dream that he wants to bring back sniper school and make it a permanent fixture in the United States Marine Corps.
Why wasn't it? Like, the whole division thing about the Marines is how good of shooters they are. Like, every Marine's a rifleman. Why not have snipers?
Yeah, so if you don't know, in 1960, there's no snipers in the U.S. military. That's not a thing. Most people don't even know what that is or have ever even heard of it. Now, I can't speak for other countries, but in America, there always appears to be this desire from the higher-ups in the chain of command to try to get rid of the scout snipers altogether, right? We had scout snipers during World War II. Right after World War II, they got rid of the school, got rid of the job, didn't exist anymore. Korean War broke out. Bring them back. Korean War ends. Get rid of them. And in my opinion, this is due to the simple fact that the role of the scout sniper both terrifies and makes the chain of command look dumb all at the same time. Because in modern times, how are all the high-ranking generals that are going to conveniently have a nice, cushy, multi-million-dollar-a-year job at a DoD contractor going to be able to justify using an $800,000 Hellfire missile to take out one bad guy when they've got some fucking 20-year-old corn-fed kid from Omaha named Lance Corporal Smith that's willing to crawl on his belly for 3 days and shoot that same guy in the face from 500 yards away with a bullet that costs 68 cents. So the first thing the scout snipers have going against them is that they're just too efficient, right? I mean, it's hard to make billions and billions of dollars off of warfare when you've got these guys out there unaliving people off the dollar menu.
You guys are getting paid?
Back in the day, the reason for getting rid of sniper school after World War II and Korea was pretty much the same thing. It wasn't a gentlemanly, noble, honorable way of conducting warfare. It seems kind of cowardly to dress up like a bush and shoot your enemy when he can't even see you, which is exactly the type of wannabe tough guy bullshit that somebody not putting their ass on the line would say. It's probably more along the lines of the high-ranking officer realizes, like, well, if I utilize snipers, my snipers are going to go shoot at their high-ranking officers because obviously that's the whole point. But then the enemy is probably going to train snipers and then their snipers are going to come shoot me.
Is he going to come in here? He's going to kick my ass.
The entire concept
Yeah.
is just stupid and un-American, right? America didn't win its independence from Great Britain because we marched our happy asses out into an open field and stood there while they shot at us. Fuck you. We're shooting at your ass from the tree line. Get off our lawn. The unofficial slogan of the United States military is, if you're not cheating, you're not trying for a reason, okay? You go to any grunt in any branch in the United States military and you give them the option of like, hey, if you fight like this, we'll write, he died like a gentleman on your tombstone. And if you fight like this, you get to go home to your kids. Guess which one he's fucking picking? So if you're not picking up what I put down, the long and short of it is basically snipers don't exist in 1960 because we allow people that don't have to do the job have an opinion on how the job needs to be done. That's why. But Jim Land has...
It's like most stores that have like 6 managers and like 3 departments.
Been studying up on this. He's been reading the old manuals that he could find. He's been talking to some of the older guys and he's like, this sniping thing sounds like it's pretty fucking important. Somebody should figure this out and preserve it because one day we might need it. So he figures out everything he can about it, gets all the information. He writes up a proposal to the chain of command that he wants to have the very first Scout Sniper School. It's 2 weeks long, and he's going to teach it here in Hawaii. And the chain of command is like, I mean, you guys are the rifle team. All you do is go shoot guns all day anyways. If you want to do it while crawling around in the bushes, fucking go for it. I don't care. Get out of my office. So now, with permission, Jim Land is going to take volunteers, the first of which is Carlos Hathcock, and they are going to go out into the jungles in Hawaii and figure out how to become snipers. Starting from scratch, this is going to be the first iteration of the now legendary Marine Corps Scout Sniper program. So
Yeah, you have a kid who's been doing that for 10 years in the woods in Arkansas. I think he knows how to be stealthy.
they go out for 2 weeks, they train, they lay the groundwork for the Marine Corps Scout Sniper program. Obviously, Carlos Hathcock excels because he's an expert woodsman. He knows how to move and traverse terrain and be quiet the entire time. And then after the 2 weeks is over, that's pretty much it. Jim Land keeps teaching the course, but Carlos Hathcock is done. He was just a student. He's going to go back to the shooting team. More or less, he just got a pat on the back and attaboy, and then a certificate that said that he was a Scout Sniper now, but the certificate doesn't really mean a whole lot because nobody knows what the fuck a Scout Sniper even is. So Carlos just kind of chalks it up to a cool life experience that he's thankful for, but he goes back to doing his competitive shooting in Hawaii. That goes on for another year. By 1962, he's getting moved over to North Carolina to a place called Cherry Point, which is weird because that's a Marine Corps air base, and he's technically an infantryman as a machine gunner 0331, so they're not even going to have any work for him there. Regardless, he's got to go because he's got orders. So he moves to North Carolina, he shows up to the Cherry Point air base, reports to the commander's office, and the commander's like, okay, son, I'm just going to level with you. I don't have a use for a machine gunner. I don't even know how you ended up here. How would you feel about just being like general staff? Which basically translates to he's going to be the groundskeeper, he's going to be mowing the lawn, scrubbing the toilets, maintaining the base's facilities, which to Carlos Hathcock is an absolute nightmare. He does not want to spend the next 3 to 5 years of his career being a glorified janitor for this air base. He feels like he has just been punched directly in the gut the minute those words left the commander's mouth. The
I was at nuts.
commander, seeing this look of horror on Hathcock's face, starts laughing. He's like, son, relax. Your buddy Jim Land called me. He made sure that you came to this air base because we have one of the best shooting teams in the country, and you're going to be competing for us now.
You son of a bitch.
To which Carlos, like, huge relief, he gets to just continue shooting and training people how to shoot all day, every day. It's his passion in life. It's the perfect job for him. He gets to keep living the dream. But here's the thing. At this point in time, Carlos Hathcock is a private. And as a private, he's living in the barracks with a bunch of other Marines. And all the other Marines start to notice that Carlos he's a little bit different. Carlos isn't just into his job and enjoys shooting. This man is obsessed with shooting. He stays out at the range every night until it's too dark to keep shooting, and then he comes back to the barracks. He'll drink and smoke like a normal Marine, but he's not going out chasing women. He's not going to the bars. He's staying at the barracks with his rifle next to his bunk, practicing dry firing from all of the firing positions. And just to be clear, he's doing this for hours on end.
Yeah, he probably had a spectatism. I just throwing it out there.
On a concrete floor. Okay, some of these firing positions, like the prone position or the rice paddy squat, are not fun to hold, and this guy is doing it for hours every single night. He's basically practicing death yoga while he's smoking and drinking. It's the most Marine Corps shit I've ever heard in my entire life. So after witnessing this go on every single day for months, the rest of the Marines in the barracks are like, okay, we got to get this guy laid.
From now on, your dick is my dick. I'm getting you some pussy.
So one of the Marines is dating a girl that's a teller at the local bank, and there's another girl at this very same bank that's single, so they manage to set Carlos Hathcock up on a blind date. He shows up to the bank, introduces himself. Hi, I'm Carlos Hathcock. Her name is Josephine. They go out on a date. They both fall in love immediately because Carlos Hathcock doesn't miss. Very next day, he's out at the range all day. He's training people, getting training in. That's his job. The normal working day comes to an end, and Carlos does not stay on the range until sunset like he has every other day. No, Private Hathcock goes into town and buys a brand new car because he has to keep impressing Joe, and he needs that car to take her out on dates, which is the most private in the military shit I've ever heard in my entire life. Every single private finishes training, goes to their unit, and then goes and buys a brand new V6 Mustang or Camaro to impress women. And he spent
I'm gonna say Dodge Charger. That's up there.
Spends absolutely all of his money on this car. The only thing he has left in his budget is enough money to keep getting his hair cut, which he absolutely has to do anyways. But you know what? It was worth it because Carlos and Josephine ended up getting married. They moved in with one another, and now Josephine's the one that has to sit there and watch Carlos do dry firing drills on the living room floor every single night before bed.
What the hell? Are you out of your fucking mind?
Relax, Lois. I was aiming for the mailbox. I'm just trying to make a point.
Good morning, Lois.
And this goes on for years. In 1962, he ends up setting a record for the Marine Corps long range A course, scoring 248 out of 250 possible shots, a record that to this day has never been broken. In the fall of 1965, he would win silver in a national match competition, which is a huge deal. He would also be recognized as a distinguished marksman, which is essentially being granted the rank of Jedi as far as competition shooting goes. And then, that very same year, he would win the Wimbledon Cup. And no, not the tennis thing, okay? The Wimbledon Cup is awarded for whoever wins the 1,000-yard high-powered rifle marksmanship competition, and whoever does that is considered to kind of be the best rifle marksman on the planet at that point in time, and in 1965, it was Carlos Hathcock.
Yeah, so this guy's just been gearing up for this. Oh, there's Ned, so I can talk anyway. Yeah, so you pretty much have a guy who's basically super, like, autistic about firing, waiting to go to war. He joined the military.
A couple of months later, Carlos Hathcock, the best marksman on the planet, is on his way to Vietnam. So naturally, the Marine Corps makes him guard the front gate to a base. No, I'm not kidding.
Yeah,
okay, because you got to remember, nobody understands what a sniper is at this point in time. Jim Land just created the course for it 4 years prior, and none of the tactics have been battle tested. So presumably, there's like maybe a couple hundred Marines that have passed the Scout Sniper course running around in the entire Marine Corps. Nobody understands what a sniper is. Nobody understands how to utilize them, when to use them, and what they're doing. So when they're trying to figure out where to send Hathcock over in Vietnam, all they see is that he's an 0331 machine gunner that has not been attached to an infantry unit and has not been training with a machine gun for the past 5 years, so they don't feel comfortable sending him into combat, so they just have him guard the front gate. I mean, I guess to be fair, it's probably the safest front gate in Vietnam. No bad guys getting within 1,000 yards of it. And this goes on for the first 4 months that Carlos is in Vietnam, him being assigned as an MP guarding the front gate to a base. Carlos Hathcock absolutely hates it the entire time. But then Jim Land gets deployed to Vietnam, and he has permission to round up a bunch of other scout snipers that have already went through his program over the course of the last 5 years, and he gets to pull them aside into their own scout sniper platoon, where they get to experiment, test, and refine all the methods that he has been teaching for the last 5 years. And obviously, the first person on his list to grab up is his very first star pupil and gate guard, Carlos Hathcock.
Oh, thank God.
Thank you!
So they get this platoon of scout snipers together. They go out to what's going to be their new headquarters for the rest of the deployment. It's right outside of Da Nang, called Hill 55. And right out of the gate, this entire operation is a good old-fashioned military shit show, right? Because there hasn't been snipers in the Marine Corps since the Korean War. There's no doctrine. There's no instructions. There's no, here's how we operate, here's what we do. They have to figure all that out and just wing it. And if that...
Also, what they need.
That wasn't bad enough, because there hasn't been snipers in the Marine Corps since the Korean War. They don't have any sniper rifles in the Marine Corps. So they don't even have guns. They're just out there being snipers.
Called it.
With M1 Grands and iron sights. Obviously, that's not going to work, so Jim Land just ends up getting a bunch of civilian hunting rifles with scopes sent over to Vietnam and giving those to the men, and Carlos Hathcock ends up with a Winchester Model 70 chambered in 30-06 with an 8X scope. Land also somehow manages to get his guys match-grade ammunition, which is like a higher quality, more accurate ammunition that you're going to want if you're shooting at long ranges. From there, they get the operation underway. They go out, they start conducting missions, they start developing the doctrine, figuring out what works and what doesn't, laying the groundwork for what is going to become modern sniping in the United States military. And then the chain of command chimes in with brilliant ideas,
God.
Still not really understanding what these guys are trying to do.
It's one of those things where I think I've heard someone say, it's like, if you want something done, just let the E-Force just go at it.
And they're just like, oh, hey, well, since you're like experimenting and, you know, developing stuff or whatever over on Hill 55, what if we just start sending you new guys that haven't done the Scout Sniper program previously and also aren't professional marksmen, and then you can just, you know, train them how to be scout snipers in a live combat zone on the fly for funsies. Does that sound good for you? Don't really care what you think. Do it anyways. K, bye.
That would be great.
God.
Okay.
Okay, do you understand how absurd that is? It's like Nikola Tesla in his laboratory unlocking the secrets of alternating current electricity, and random dudes like Steve and Kevin just keep showing up to the door with orders of like, hi, I'm supposed to get trained in the electricity stuff. Like, I'm still working on unlocking the secrets and figuring it out. I'll let you know when I'm done. Nope, can't do that. You got to teach me everything you know right now on the spot live. Let's go. So we've got the pioneers, the new guys, training the even newer guys as this goes along.
So where's the office back at Division? In the office, baby.
According to Jim Land, Carlos Hathcock was actually one of, if not the best instructors he had. Not only
Well, yeah, the guy's been a psychopath training for the past 5 years.
only was he exceptional at instructing people at how to shoot, because that's been his job the entire time he's been in the Marine Corps, but he also was very good at taking guys out on real life missions and putting their mental ability to the test, because he didn't really care how well you shot. He cared about how well you shot after laying in the prone position for 2 days. The mental game was the biggest factor in determining if somebody was cut out to be a sniper or if they weren't, and Carlos was extremely gifted at finding that out very quickly. In addition to teaching, Carlos is going out on absolutely every mission he can. He ends up becoming good friends with another sniper by the name of John Roland Burke, and he prefers to go out with him or Jim Land himself, end up being the two guys that he goes out on missions with the most. And Hathcock preferred them because they were also exceptional scouts, which is what was most important to him, because Hathcock preferred to get within 100 yards of an enemy before taking a shot, just so it was a sure thing. And a lot of the other new guys just weren't good at moving quietly through the jungle, and that prevented Hathcock from being able to do that. So if John Roland Burke and Jim Land weren't available, Hathcock would just go out by himself. And this is one of those points I mentioned previously where people like to start casting doubt and criticism upon this story, like, buh, he must be lying because snipers always go out in pairs, they never go out by themselves, buh.
Okay, this is also well before that whole policy was probably put in place. That's probably what Mr. Fowler is about to say.
I would agree with that if I didn't have the context that the sniper that we're talking about was one of the very first modern Marine Corps scout snipers in U.S. history that was actively in the process of developing the doctrine that's going to shape that career field for the rest of fucking forever. So yeah, normally you'd be right. However, historical context is a thing, and it's kind of important, okay? Moving on. So Carlos Hathcock and the rest of the entire scout sniper platoon start racking up an unprecedented amount of kills because they fight different than the rest of the military.
Jungle guerrilla warfare has worked throughout all times. Doesn't care the era with the weaponry. You can sneak around and pick people off without them knowing, it's going to be effective.
Right? The Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese army, they run into Americans. They're like, oh, they're 1,000 yards away. They're 800 yards away. We're fine. And normally they are fine, except for when they run into these guys, then they have a mind-blowing issue. So Jim Land is sending up reports like, hey, my platoon has 14 confirmed kills this week. And the chain of command is like, what? Whoa, hold on. That's like more confirmed kills than an entire infantry battalion is getting at this point in time, and you got that from one platoon-sized element? That's not even possible. What is going on over there? So he kind of explains how they're operating, what they're testing. You know, they've got a couple dudes that are doing one-man operations, they're doing some two-man operations, they're experimenting with three-man operations, and the higher-ups in the chain of command are like, I don't believe you. You know, these 2 or 3 or 1 guys could just be lying and having a gentleman's agreement to pad their stats. I'm not going to trust this. The only way that we're going to recognize confirmed kills from this unit is if a commanding officer themselves witnesses it, which is absolutely an insane criteria, right? Especially with how a sniper operates, because now the only way that you're going to be able to get a confirmed kill is if Jim Land or another officer goes out on a mission with you, or if you're up on the hill performing Overwatch duty and there's an officer also performing Overwatch duty with you, which actually ends up being how most of these guys got their confirmed kills, and all the kills they got when they went out on missions didn't actually count. Because obviously they weren't always able to take an officer out on a sniper mission with them, so those kills were never able to be confirmed and weren't counted. So it's kind of a silly standard, but Carlos didn't care at all. He didn't care about the stats, he didn't care about the glory. Even later in life, when he was asked in interviews how many kills he thought he had, he genuinely had no idea. He could estimate a rough range, and that was about it. Hathcock didn't take pride in killing the enemy. He took pride in the fact that he was the one being put in the dangerous situations in the first place, because he truly believed that he was the best man for the job. And if he didn't go, they were...
I think also might have been on an unsubscribed podcast episode that I didn't watch yet. Like they said, like Hathcock was saying, like I was always going out fighting the same person. He gave him like some random name. That way he could like kind of separate his whole everything from everything he was doing.
We're going to send someone else out, and if that person got hurt because they weren't as good as he was, that was going to be on him. Because of this, Carlos was going out on every single mission that he possibly could. According to Jim Land, it was impossible to keep Carlos from going out. It was even tougher to reel him back in. The man was harder than woodpecker lips. Because of this, Hathcock starts racking up a ton of kills. Some of them are confirmed when he's going out with Jim Land, some of them are confirmed when he's on Hill 55, and a ton of them aren't confirmed when he's going out by himself or with John Burke. However, Carlos genuinely doesn't care. He's just going to work. Somewhere early on in this process, he stumbles across a white feather. He's not exactly sure what kind of bird it came from, but he thinks it probably came from a chicken. So he picks it up, sticks it in his boonie cap, and he leaves it there for the rest of the time he's in Vietnam. Okay, that's absolutely crazy for a sniper to do. White is not a very common color inside the jungles of Vietnam, and having that color on him is going to stick out like a sore thumb while he's trying to wear his camouflage and everything else and go unnoticed. And when he was asked why he did it,
also, it's on his head, so they can literally just aim for it.
he said he was basically taunting the enemy, like, here I am, come get me. He was rubbing it in their face that he was the best, and he knew it. Now, on one hand, I feel like this seems incredibly reckless and uncharacteristically arrogant for him, but on the other hand, I think he did it on purpose, and it lines up with his code of ethics perfectly. I think he did this on purpose to protect the guy that went out with him, whether that was Jim Land or John Burke or anybody else, because he got them in the situation where he took them out on this incredibly dangerous mission that he volunteered for because he was the best. And I think he felt that if another enemy sniper or an enemy spotted them first, that feather would mean that they saw him first and shot him and gave his partner a chance to get away. I think that...
Yeah, could be very plausible. It's just like, hey, who's this guy? When I can see it.
The single quality that separates a boy from a man is when you make somebody else's well-being your personal responsibility. Carlos Hathcock wasn't just a man, he was the man, because he made absolutely everyone's well-being his personal responsibility.
Ooh, I'm gonna see how many chapters he did. No. Kind of wish it popped up. Yeah, I'm gonna make this video into 2 parts, release at the same time. But yeah, I'll do this chapter, then I'm gonna make a whole other reaction, so it's not super long, stretched out.
As time passes and Carlos continues to rack up more and more kills, the enemy becomes more and more aware that there's a hotshot sniper out there always wearing a white feather, and they start calling him Long Tang or White Feather. And as Carlos' reputation grows both with the enemy, the scout sniper platoon, and his chain of command, so does his experience. And with that experience, he starts to develop his doctrine, his standards, his operating procedures, and how he does things. He now realizes...
I'm going out on a limb saying that's going to be the Marine Corps Scout Sniper standards and whatnot.
Realizes that he for sure operates best in a pair, and his number one right-hand man is John Burke, that he wants out there with him on every single mission possible. He also figures out that the best way to go out onto a mission is not to be inserted by helicopter with his pair, but to link up with another local infantry unit and go out with their entire platoon, and then him and his spotter will peel off from that platoon and then go out on their 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 day mission by themselves. But that is the best way to be inserted and go unnoticed. He also creates a rule that...
Yeah, that makes sense, because that way the helicopter would draw attention, but if it's just part of a platoon that just went missing, no one would notice that.
A sniper fires from a position 3 times, no more, and then he moves to another position. But on one occasion, he would violate that rule. At first, it wasn't any different from what had become his new norm for a mission. Him and John Burke linked up with a different infantry company, went out with a platoon-sized element on their patrol, and at some random point that they picked themselves, they peeled off and went off, just the 2 of them, to go do their sniper thing. And while they're going out, they had planned to go out and stalk for 6 days. They brought just enough food and just enough water for that, and that's it. Hathcock always packed light. He only brought whatever he could fit in his pockets. He never went out with a rucksack or a bag of any kind. They're a couple hours into this patrol or this...
Oh god, the music's getting ominous. I'm saying something bad's about to really happen.
...stock, and they come across this great overlook position overlooking thousands of yards of rice paddies, and right down the middle of it, there's this levee where there's a ton of water to make it through. So they post up right on the wood line with rice paddies, then this levee, and then more rice paddies on the other side. It's perfect because if the enemy is on the other side of that levee, they're going to be able to engage the enemy, and the enemy's going to have to try to make their way through all that water in the levee, and they can just start picking them off one by one, or they can use that time to get out of there. So that's what they do. They get their hides set up, and they just start watching and waiting, and hours pass, and finally, that evening, sure enough, the hamburgers show up.
The cornerstone of any nutritious breakfast.
Yeah, that's what Carlos Hathcock calls the enemy. According to him, there was only actually one enemy in Vietnam that he was fighting, and his name was Homer Hamburger. I have no fucking idea why.
Yep, there's the name. I figured he was pretty off.
But I thought it was funny. So, 150 Homer Hamburgers come dilly-dallying through the rice pad.
Yeah, it's probably so it separates what he was probably really doing. If he had to keep fighting at least one guy.
These guys are like 1,000 yards away on the other side of the levee, but they're coming towards them. So, they keep letting them come closer, and right as they're about to get up on the levee, they can really start seeing them. They're about 500 to 600 yards away, which is perfect distance for Carlos to basically have 100% accuracy. I mean, he's the best shot at 1,000 yards in the world. 500 yards for him is a walk in the park. Granted, nothing's actually for sure. It's never 100%. It's definitely not fish in a barrel, but it is quite literally Homer Hamburgers and a rice patty, which is close enough. So as this entire company comes up to this levee, Hathcock whispers over to John Burke with his M14, hey, you're going to take out the officer in the front, I'm going to take out the officer in the back. So that's what they do. They both fire, they both take out their officer that they were aiming for.
I'll fire first. I want you two to start with the officers and work your way down.
I always like how he actually puts like what it's from. Like this is from the Patriot.
So now there's like 147 Homer Hamburgers looking around like, oh shit, what do we do? And the third and final officer takes off running. Believe it or not, it's pretty hard to run in a rice paddy, and you can't run very fast, but he also didn't have to run very far, so at least on the bright side, he didn't die tired. So at this point, Carlos is shot twice, John Burke is shot once. That's 3 shots from one location. They got to bounce. But for some reason, Carlos is like, hold on, let's wait a second. Because as he's watching this like 147 dudes, they're just standing there. They don't know what to do. They just bunker down out in the open in the middle of this field and don't do anything. So Carlos is like, I mean, I know we're supposed to move after 3, but I guess we can just sit here and pick them off until they do something. Now, if you're an American, this seems weird to us because in the American military, if you take out the officer, like, congratulations, you've just taken the regulator off the ass-whooping machine. Now you've got a bunch of pissed-off grunts that are looking to get creative, and you're about to find out the hard way it's never a war crime the first time. But in a bunch of other militaries, especially historically, the further we go back in time, they aren't trained to improvise and win anyways. They're trained.
Oh, especially in those Asian countries where, like, respect is like a massive thing. So it's like, he's our leader, we have to respect him, he'll know what to do. You take that guy out, you're like, oh crap.
Trained to hunker down and await for further orders before they do anything, and that's what these guys are doing. And apparently these guys didn't have a radio with them because the orders never came, because they just kept sitting there, and Carlos just kept picking them off one after one after one. In his own words, every time one of them would peek up their head, they'd lose their haircut. Now at this point, Carlos considers calling in artillery because he does have a radio and he does have artillery waiting on standby, but he thinks that that's going to play into their favor because if he fires artillery, they're in a rice paddy. So those artillery shells are going to be landing into the water of the rice paddy, drastically decreasing their effectiveness. And then as soon as the first shell lands, all the guys can call, incoming, dive into the water of the rice paddy, ride out the volley, get up, run. They do that 2 or 3 times, they're home free. So he's just going to keep them pinned down, and he does it all day long until nightfall. So when the sun goes down, Carlos finally calls in for artillery, but it's not normal artillery. He calls in for star clusters and just lights up the sky over this rice paddy so that he can see what's
Hey, I need more light. Can you send in more light?
Going on and keep them pinned down all night long. Once it became apparent that they understood that they were going to be pinned down all night long, Carlos and John Burke took this opportunity to move to a different location. Next morning, first light, the Hamburgers have mustered up the courage and come up with a plan that they are going to try to directly assault Carlos Hathcock, or at least his general direction, by running through a levee and about 500 to 600 yards of rice paddies. And surely some of them will make it there. Yeah, that plan didn't last very long. They decided that was a horrible plan right around the time Carlos and John had to reload. So they hunker back down pretty much in the same exact spot, not knowing what to do. They just start like randomly firing at where they think Carlos and John are from 600 yards away with their AK-47s. So it's not very effective fire, even if they were shooting where Carlos and John were, but they're not because they're shooting at their old spot that they had yesterday. From here, Carlos just goes back to keeping them pinned down, just playing whack-a-homer. Every time one pops up, they lose their haircut. They know that they can't move, and they're stuck there. And Carlos is perfectly content with just letting them sit there and bake in the sun all day long, because the more dehydrated and tired they get, the less likely it's going to be that they're going to get away. He has basically turned this into his very own mini.
Oh, what's that quote that Dan O'Brien always says? Like, when he was like, taught, like, exhaustion makes cowards out of everybody.
Miniature war of attrition. Night comes. They light up the sky again all night long. Keeps them pinned down. The next day, same exact thing happens. Keeps them pinned down. Night comes again. Light it up all night long. Every day these guys are baking in the sun, and every night John Burke is radioing back to the artillery, getting them more and more dialed in. And this goes on for 5 days straight, and by the end of the 5th day, Carlos and John are about out of water, they're completely out of food, they're both tired, they haven't slept much. Carlos figures these guys are as tired as they're absolutely gonna get. They're not gonna be able to run very fast through this rice paddy. They're definitely not making it through that levee to get me in time if I try to slip away. And on top of that, the artillery boys should have this pretty well dialed in, so he calls in artillery and they level the entire rice paddy as him and John make their way back to Hill 55.
All right, we're going to pause it there because it's roughly the halfway point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this a two-parter because it is an hour and 8 minutes long. This way I actually can talk and actually do reactions and just sitting here like... But yeah, that's the end of part 1. Part 2 will be out at, 12:20 and not 12:15. Or I might just drop them both at the same time. I don't know. But that's it. I'll see you weird people for part 2. If not, I'll see you weird people Saturday.